Welcome to the place where we learn about and learn from the leaders in our field who are powering human creativity. I am Erin Dworkin, and this is Arts Engines. Thanks again for joining me here on Arts Engines. Today's guest is Erin Lunsford Norton, who serves as the Vice President of Artistic Planning at the New Jersey Symphony. Erin, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
So I always love inviting a namesake to the show. Love that. And of course, it's so great because the New Jersey Symphony is one of our wonderful partners. Creative partners helped us to co-curate this show. And I definitely want to kind of talk about the centennial. And of course, I should share with our audience, I had a wonderful time this past year being able to perform myself with the New Jersey Symphony, which was such an extraordinary experience doing American Rhapsody. So Erin, I thought what would be great is if we could just kind of capture, and one of the things that's so great about the show is a lot of times people, they see these administrative roles that people have in orchestras, especially, they're like, what is that person actually doing, right? Like what is involved in that position? So wondering if you could kind of share with us kind of what is the scope of what is involved for the Vice President of Artistic Planning for any orchestra, but especially in New Jersey.
Yeah, it's an overwhelming job in some ways. It's got a massive scope because artistic planning really encapsulates every artistic thing that we are doing as an orchestra. And that is primarily what we do is we put a beautiful artistic product on the stage. So I oversee the programming of all of our series, from our classical programs to our family programs, to educational, to pops. I really oversee all of that, which entails being in touch with managers, figuring out when different guest artists and guest conductors can join us. It means having these strategic conversations with our senior staff here, our musicians and our music director about what we want to achieve in our future seasons. It means talking to composers about commissions, what new pieces might we want to premiere in future seasons. It also means overseeing our composer in residence program. It means really being there at rehearsals and performances on a day-to-day basis, really having great relationships with our musicians and the artists that we work with, and helping to make sure that every performance goes off without a hitch, that it's presented at the highest level possible. So it's an overwhelming job. And what's funny about it is I really do, like, some of my days I'm sending emails all day, which sounds so boring, but it's really like trying to tie all of these threads together and make sure that we are putting together the most cohesive season that we can. So it's kind of always been a dream of mine to be in a role like this as a former musician. And it feels like I get to be very close to the music that we put on stage every day, which is really special.
It really is. And I love how you captured that. And it kind of almost seems like it's this extraordinary web of everything that's involved to actually make this extraordinary musical experience happen on stage. And you are the central figure that is making sure that that web stays interconnected and is kind of serving a singular unified purpose.
That's a great way to put it, because it's really, when you think about an orchestra and the administration behind an orchestra, you've got artistic planning, you've got operations, which handles like the actual nitty-gritty of how many chairs are on stage and all that kind of stuff, booking the venues. You've got our education team who handles all of our relationships to educational partners. You've got development who handles fundraising. And someone needs to be kind of the central hub of information of what's going on stage and how can we make sure that everything we do is interconnected and makes sense cohesively. Like we are trying to put forth a cohesive vision for our organization. And so my role is very much trying to keep that all aligned.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it really is. It's just fantastic and so exciting, and definitely seems all-consuming.
It is all-consuming, but in a good way. I love it. I love being so deeply involved in this stuff.
Yeah, and that's probably the other thing that is shared that I think is so key and important for our audience, which is that you have these roles that are in many ways all-consuming. They're not just 9 to 5 types of things. But that what goes along with that is a passion for the work, and a passion, it sounds like from what you described, from engaging. In other words, you love engaging with the music director, with the musicians, with the agents or managers who are managing guest artists and stuff. Like, these are all of what sounds like kind of a collection of extraordinary relationships.
Yes, it really is a role that involves handling and stewarding all of these important artistic relationships that we have. And, an orchestra is usually at least 70 people on stage at a given time. And that's not including all of our staff behind the scenes and our crew. And so keeping all of these people kind of aligned on this one goal of putting on great performances and reaching our communities, that is a tricky thing. Managing people, managing relationships is a learned skill. And if you end up in this world, in the orchestral music world, chances are you're very dedicated to your craft and you feel very strongly about what you do on a day-to-day basis. But that's what I love about engaging with all these folks that we work with, is everyone has this incredibly deep passion for what we do and the communities we serve. And it leads us to amazing places.
Oh, it's so awesome. So, in addition to all of that and the regular great work of the New Jersey Symphony Orchestra, there is a centennial. Tell us about what's going on.
Yeah, it's a centennial, and I joined the orchestra in August, so I hit the ground running with the centennial season. It's been an incredible celebration of everywhere the New Jersey Symphony has been and everywhere we're going in the future. We've brought back several former music directors and artistic leaders of the organization. We just had Naomi Yarvi back a couple weeks ago, which was an amazing experience. He's one of the most beloved conductors of all time, and our musicians still really adore him. We also have commissioned
some connections with him in Detroit here. So,
oh, of course, yeah, exactly. He's just such a special person. So we just had him back a couple weeks ago. And we're also commissioning a lot of new work by living composers, especially composers who have deep relationships here in New Jersey and in our community. We're premiering a work by Steve Mackey, who runs the composition department at Princeton, just next week, which is very exciting. And that actually has text by former U.S. Poet Laureate Tracy K. Smith. So that's a very exciting kind of a social justice oriented piece. We're also premiering a work by Daniel Bernard Roumain, our resident artistic catalyst later this season. We've had tons of exciting events. We had our Centennial Gala with Yo-Yo Ma, and we featured our youth orchestra musicians on stage. So all of that to say, it's been an incredible experience to celebrate all that makes us special and to look forward to the next century too.
it's so exciting. And first, and just with what you just described, right? The breadth. And I think that's
Yes.
what kind of stands out. And I think because we have obviously so many people who are involved with any number of orchestras who tune into the show, but just that there can be this breadth. I think all too often, sometimes people outside the orchestra world think, well, orchestras just do this. They just, perform X standards, et cetera. And just the breadth that you just described of what's taking place is extraordinary. And of course, that connection to community that you mentioned, connecting, whether it's local composers or other, seems very relevant.
Yes, and it's been really a central part of our mission in the last few years, is to reach new communities that have not previously been a part of the New Jersey Symphony family. Part of the Centennial season strategy was to revamp our family series, for example, to highlight genres that maybe the orchestra is less familiar with and bring in audiences that may be less familiar with us. So we've been partnering with great community partners on a gospel show that happened in December, and that was really special. Gospel chorus made up of all Newark-based, New Jersey-based singers. And next month, we're doing a Bollywood-themed family concert, also co-curated by a great artistic partner here in New Jersey, to help us really celebrate these genres in a way that's very authentic and that we feel like we are reaching people with what they want to hear. So we're very excited about that refocusing of our family series as well.
Awesome. And so I'm curious too, and I'm sure a lot in our people in our audience would be curious, kind of from your vantage point, right, leading all of these artistic planning and activities that the orchestra is doing, and thinking also as well about the centennial. Moving forward, do you see any trends, any directions, whether specifically for the New Jersey Symphony and or just in the field? Do you feel like, I think we'll be doing more of this, or we'll be trending towards or tending towards more of this type of impact? Do you see any trends that you would want to share?
I do. I mean, I think that there has been a lot more focus on community. I feel like I've said that word a lot, but I see a lot of other artistic administrators in my role at other orchestras really focusing on the people that are right in their orchestra's backyard who may not have connected with the orchestra in the past, and figuring out what do those people want to hear and how can we do that in a way that feels authentic to what the orchestra is and what, both as an instrument and as a genre. And that's really exciting to me. For us in our season, our 23-24 season, which will launch our next century, very exciting. There's a really deep focus on American music, which I'm personally very excited about because I think American orchestral music has been relegated to this kind of light classical pops, not as serious sort of stereotype, when in reality we have this really rich tapestry of American composers, not just Copland and Bernstein and Gershwin, but people like William Grant Still and jazz composers who lived more in the world of jazz, like Duke Ellington, for example. There's so much there, and there's so much amazing history that brings in more than just the Western classical canon. And we're really celebrating that next season. It's probably the most heavily American season we've ever presented. And I do see more orchestras presenting more of the works of contemporary living American composers, which is very exciting to me.
Yeah, it really, really is. And in addition to just this extraordinary work, it's the opportunities for living composers to
Yes.
really be able to create and have their work experienced by so many people. Well, this is such extraordinary work. We're unfortunately just about out of town, but I always like to ask of all of my guests, this work, as you described, the breadth is extraordinary. There's got to be some tough days when either it's possibly, of course, never the musicians, but maybe agents or others, where
Exactly.
things are a little tough. And just wondering when there are either obstacles or really tough situations as a leader, because you've clearly been so successful in our field. As a leader, do you have either methods or mechanisms or solutions, ways to kind of overcome as a leader and kind of make it through those tougher experiences?
Yeah, these happen all the time. I mean, I always think of orchestral performance as ultimately a compromise amongst the, potentially up to 100 players on stage. We're all individuals and we're trying to come together to achieve a common goal. So for me, when we have these conflicts, when we reach difficult situations, I am always just trying to listen to all sides and try to find the path forward where everyone feels at least heard. We can't give everyone everything they want at all times. It's impossible. And you please no one when you try to please everyone, oftentimes. So for me, it's about taking a step back and remembering that we all have ultimately the same goal here. We're all trying to achieve the same thing. And even if we have strong feelings about it, I think leaning into that commonality and making sure we all remember that we're all on the same team and we're all trying to do the same thing, that's what ultimately helps us move forward in a lot of cases. But I also, in terms of the actual difficult moments as they're happening, I always try to take a walk before I respond to any emails that are frustrating or any situations that are making my blood boil a little bit. I try to go outside, take a 10-minute walk, calm down, think, and then come back and respond to the situation. So it's all about just kind of remaining calm and focusing on that common goal.
Erin Lunsford Norton, you truly are one of the arts engines who is powering human creativity in our world. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. This was such a pleasure. I really appreciate it.